like to welcome our guests today. It's Jonkers from Netherlands. Karen is a researcher and process-manager in C-REALIST. This is the organization, right?
Realist. It's realization.
Crealization.
Creative and realize all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and you are a climate researcher, a network builder, you are a facilitator, and above all, a community builder. So Karen is working a lot with the grassroots movements.
Correct.
We also welcome Hugi Ásgeirsson, a Swedish co-founder of an organization, a platform, Blivande, and Cobudget. We also have Annika Bromberg from Sweden. Annika is a set and costume designer with a focus on international performing arts and sustainability, and also a participant of a leadership program, Julie's Bicycle, which has now the second edition in Sweden. And as far as I know, Annika, you participated in the first edition. So welcome everybody. And I would like to start with you presenting yourself a little bit more and your perspective on how to work with climate and culture. How do you work with climate and culture, and what do you think about the subject in general? Karen, let's start with the grassroots.
Well, thank you, Awa. Well, the basic point is that we need to start raising questions on, what is the climate exactly, what does it mean to us, and what is this change, what is it about? Because if we don't raise the question, life will continue as ever, and in the meantime, the weather will change. But with raising the questions, we also need to do things, because raising questions, we can do that on a political level. But when you want things to land with people, we need to act, play, eat, have dinners, have companies getting together and do things. So I'm kind of doer. I try to invite people for like Walt Disney does, invite people for something nice while in the meantime we're doing the business that we should be doing. I think that's the basic. How about you? How do you do that?
Well, I think I very much agree with that approach. I mean, I think Blivande comes out of course, a grassroots source itself. Blivande is a cultural hub in Blivande of Stockholm. And what we're very focused on is really, as our core mission, sort of building social cohesion and countering loneliness and isolation, specifically in the city of Stockholm. And from where I'm standing, I think that this is often an overlooked issue to tackle when it comes to tackling climate change. Why? Because so much, I think, of our consumerist behavior that is driving, of course, this catastrophe, in some ways comes from our lack of meaning. I mean, we overconsume and we build the material world around us to an excess degree, perhaps much because there are not interior motivators within our social structure that really satisfy and fulfill us. So I think that that's something that could be talked about a lot more. If we build good social cohesion with each other, perhaps that is actually a roundabout way to unlock different behaviors.
Yeah. And it's not only about the social cohesion, it's the big part of this growing problem is the invisible processes that are behind our backs, that are the big supply chains, the waste streams, all the things we don't see while we're just making our cup of coffee and eating an avocado, which takes like thousands of liters of water, which we don't know. We just don't know.
Annika.
Yes, very nice to be here, to sit with you. And when you come from other fields, I mean, it's really these kind of discussions that we need. I'm a freelance set and costume designer since 25 years. And for me, it really started with the fires in Sweden, 2018. Before that, I was aware and I was working with sustainability in my private life. But that's really when I understood that I suffer from cognitive dissonance, where in my private life I can work with sustainability, but then I come to my work where I spend all my time and there's no possibilities for me as a freelance artist to get involved in the sustainability work at the theaters. And that's also when I started to understand that there aren't any tools, there aren't any methods, there wasn't anything in the performing arts section that we could work with. So I went to SKH and did my master thesis on that because I really wanted to make some kind of study that I could bring with me to my further work. And now I'm working in Gävle Folkteater, which is a small theater. And last year they had this call out for artists, and there were 13 artists that came to the theater, and we're going to work for a long term, which is very unusual for freelance artists. Usually you just do one project. So now we're going to be there for 5 years, and we all, I mean, the 3 set designers that came to the theater, we all said we want to work with sustainability in some way to get it into the structure, because it's also like, I always felt that it's on the personal level. I have to be educated, I have to be informed, and then I'm going to introduce that to the production, because it's not in the production line. So I took the responsibility, and I was also, one of the questions I was looking at for my thesis was that, why am I protecting the rehearsal space from that hard question of sustainability? It's like that's too hard for the director to handle, or for the artistic work being done there. And then it's also a way it really has to come into the whole structure of the work. So in Gävle now we are 3 set designers, and together with 3 other people from the theater, we have a sustainability group, and we have divided their work among us. So I'm doing now a study, so we know how to work for the rest of the time. And another set designer, Anna Adelius, she's working to see how the costume department can be changed in their working field. And because, I mean, costume and textile is a huge thing for the environment and climate. And the third set designer is going to look on the regional level, how can we have a place for material to be reused for the institutions and for freelance artists. So it's really happening a lot on that very small theater. So I'm super happy for that. And I really wish that other theaters in Sweden will take the lead also to do.
What is needed for other theaters to take the lead? What do they need? Do they need a person like you?
Yes, they have to multiply us, and because it's really about, I mean, often I hear that, but why should the performing arts deal with sustainability? We are just speaking, or we're not doing so much. We are a very small field. But I saw some figures of that the entertainment industry in Europe is 3 times bigger than the car industry in Europe. So it's like, no, we are part of a much larger industry, and we are a part of the society. Because then also when I came to Gävle, I asked, so do the region have any demands for us to work with sustainability? And the answer is no. So that's also my thing to bring out, that we should demand that we should work with sustainability. We cannot sit in the back seat and think that somebody else is going to tell us to do that, because we have to tell other people.
Well, you're the storytellers. You're the storytellers. Yeah. So you're the performing sector are the ones that can bring the stories into the community. And the funny thing you just pointed out, you need to be an example yourself. You first have to turn your eyes inward and see, what exactly am I doing in terms of greenhouse gases, gasoline, energy consumption, recycling, what can I do? And that's already a big study in itself. But then if you have your food, your material, your energy, your building, if you have all these kind of aspects in hand and managed, then and you don't have to be perfect, of course, but then you can start to also tell the story about these different segments.
But you, as researcher, you are also a climate researcher. You started a water festival, which is a culture event. Why this tool, so to say?
Well, in this case, the municipality, they've met, all the municipalities, they've got a big challenge because there's, climate change coming upon us, and it means, heavy rainfalls, but also drought and heat, and in some cases perhaps sea level rise. But that's in Sweden. You're so privileged. Your country rises, so that's a good.
The opposite, right?
South of Sweden.
Okay,
Suffering.
But so the municipalities, they need answers to this heat island effect, to the abundance of water that can come down, and the sewage system right now is not prepared for the amounts that can come down. And that means that not only the municipality needs to act by increasing the amount of water that can go into the sewage system, by increasing the area of green public space instead of stone set or cement or asphalt surfaces. They also need to involve community and say, please take out some of your tiles in your garden, put in more plants so water can, there's a place where water can seep into the ground. And plants, trees, green will also prevent the heat island effect. So there's many reasons why the municipality needs to involve community, and water is a carrier of the message. It's a carrier of the message of the invisible process of temperature, climate, water, rain. Water is also the basic of all life. So if you talk about the biodiversity crisis going on, which is somehow connected to the climate crisis, then water can be a very good carrier. And in this festival, we arranged activities for children, which will involve the parents, activities for the parents and children, like walks and tours, and what can you eat in the wild, what kind of animals are living near the waterfront, in little canals and ponds, and walks with, say, the forest keepers, forest maintainers, just to point people on, what kind of trees, what kind of animals, what kind of birds are there. And also just an information market with plants, and when people brought a tile, they were given a plant to put in the open space, just to make some involvement and arrangement to make it a pleasure adventure, and not so much like this is serious and we need to be so serious about it. No, let's make it fun. That helps. And get to the children first, and the parents will come along.
Yeah, and I think that a part of Blivande is also the same policy, the same strategy, a world between technology and art and participation and having fun. Surely. A lot of it, right?
Surely. When you were speaking, I thought of actually, why is it so that Sweden has developed such a clear culture of taking care of nature as you're in nature? Sweden has the right to roam laws, and having traveled around the world, I can testament to it, it's really particularly fantastically clean everywhere. People do really take care of nature and pick up after themselves. And I understand why, because there's such a clear part of the culture from you're a child to go out and understand that you're allowed to be here. This is your place, but you must take care of it. You must take the trash with you. You cannot throw things around. This is how you can tent. This is how you cannot tent, etc., etc. I remember when I was a kid in school, one of the most criminal acts you could almost do as a child was to pick certain flowers. because certain flowers are not allowed to be picked. And it was almost something you learned as well as you learned to not cross a street when there's a red light. Do not pick this flower. And why are we able, I think, to maintain those sorts of cultural norms inside of Sweden? How did that arise? And I have a feeling that it has to do with a culture of not just social cohesion, but also a sort of welfare system that supports it and make sure that people have a sort of situation in which they are not, fighting for other things, right? And a quality of life where they feel that they are somehow content to be where they are. So countering individualism is always going to be at the root, because all of these teaching methodologies, at the end of the day, if people come in and they learn this story, or they learn how to do a certain thing, but in their heart of hearts, they might act in a very different way once they come away from this, very nice setting in which you're learning about these things, but a few weeks later, are they going to actually act in this way? So there's this deep transformational change that I think we have to work with at the same time. I think Blivande, we're trying to be positioned absolutely in that place.
Yeah, and also I was also really impressed by the number of movements in Sweden, the climate movements. It all started in Sweden in '72, I think, with the first climate summit here in Stockholm. And for a few days ago, we had a big week, which was a follow-up of this climate summit. It was plus 50. This time with the whole world present here. We have the water week in August, which is also an international summit. So Sweden has really climate in focus, and I think that the competence of people is even regular like you and me is quite big because of all that conversation which is ongoing in the media.
Sure, absolutely. But we also have to remember, for those listening here, that yes, Sweden has a fantastic climate rapport and very good policies internally. However, if you flip it a little bit, and if you look at actually also the climate impact of Sweden's export industry and the things that are bought from abroad in order to enable this very, highly technological, advanced culture, our climate impact is among the highest in the world per capita. So it is a bit of a tricky situation there, because those effects are so abstracted away from our day-to-day. And how do we tackle those sort of very abstracted effects away from our day-to-day? How do we explain to people and make them feel the really systematic, complex effects of that? You having a consumer pattern where you buy a new computer every 3 years instead of every 6 years has enormous climate impact.
Yep. Well, this is exactly the invisible processes that are going on, and it starts with telling about it. I just heard a story last week that our prime minister guessed that on the question of how much of the greenhouse gases do you think have been put in the air during your lifetime, he guessed, well, perhaps 15%, 20%, but it is 80%. When you're around 50, 55, then you have been there all the time that we put in the biggest amount of greenhouse gases. The point is, we just don't know. We're not aware. It's in your laptop. It's in your car. It's in the things you can buy that are important from other countries. And I think, part of it is telling the story, but also just trying to eat the avocado in a festival with the story, being presented with the avocado with you. And I think that's where the performing arts come in. That's where entertainment comes in. That's where culture comes in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun.
It can be fun, yeah. I think we also have to, whatever we do, I sort of see this time we're in now, it's a short time, because if we want to get somewhere, we have to go into action. but we also have to be forgiving for whatever we do. That's a big step. So we have to once in a while, clap our shoulders just to say that we are doing something, and the movement will come on. But I'm also thinking sometimes it's like people ask me, okay, so why should we do something? I mean, Sweden is not going to be flooded with water. We are not going to be affected. But we really have to, I mean, the Scandinavian, we have to be front runners in this movement to show and to be a good example, to be, and also because we don't have time for everybody to investigate and to get to know everything at the same time. It's better that we share the information and we have people working on different levels. So I think it's crucial that we in Sweden and in Scandinavia, we work as fast as we can, and that people with less resources can, take an example from us and to just apply what we are doing. Because I think that's also something that we have to get more knowledge in all the sectors, and not just in performing arts, but also we have to find ways to share this information so that we can easily hook onto each other. And these systems has to be created now.
How about the power of technology, Hugi? Digitalization.
Oh, it's a big one. It's a big one because it's one of these things where technology is such a complex thing that we are often unsure, I feel, if a solution turns out to actually be just creating a larger problem. And it's something we're constantly grappling with. I mean, we can look at blockchain and cryptocurrency as one example of this. Oh, it's so perfect and fine. We don't have to use the transfer system of the banks anymore. It's just that nobody really thought about the enormous energy consumption it takes to actually produce this cryptocurrency,
And then go up exponentially.
Yes, absolutely goes up exponentially. And I mean, there are solutions being worked on for that, but it's a bit like too little, too late in a way, So technology is incredibly difficult when it comes to this. I'm not someone who is a technology optimist in terms of solving climate change. I think we have all of the technologies we need already to solve climate change. Yeah. The answer is not in groundbreaking technologies unless we break cold fusion. I mean, if we get fusion working, that's great, but we're not throwing more money and time at it doesn't seem to solve the problem. No, this is about deploying those technologies and making them as affordable and accessible as possible everywhere, not just in the countries where people are rich enough to invest in their own solar panels and put them up on their own roofs. It needs to go way wider than that. So pump the money into the existing technologies and deploy them where they are needed.
My thought was rather not the technology which enables better solutions for climate. I was thinking about awareness, about helping to raise awareness using digital tools, which we are working with a lot, especially in the cultural sector, which is now in the front line, I think, or we are developing in that direction. Sweden is quite a small country. We possibly have something to say in this context. We possibly can show some solutions, but how do we reach people?
I mean, the raising awareness in technology. I mean, when we think about social media and PR campaigns, those sort of advertising, that sort of thing. The digital landscape today is incredibly noisy. And I think what we have to understand is that, we're no longer in a situation in Europe where people do not know about climate change. We're no longer in a situation where people are unaware of that our lifestyles is having an impact. That is not really the communicational problem, I feel. The communicational problem is really much more, I think, transformative from the inside. It has to be a felt sense of what is the consequence of non-action, and doing that through communication through technology is very, very hard, because you sitting at your screen, getting that felt sense is incredibly difficult. But I think that the way, of course, in which we can do it is to use technology to sense, make, and link things together. The effects that you are feeling today from the migration crisis is completely linked to climate change. Whenever you are complaining about this, you are complaining about climate change, and you need to understand that. And making those sorts of links, yes, technology can of course be used, but today I would say that technology is almost the same like books can be used. I mean, it's such a wide range.
Yeah, and speaking about it, I mean, we are aware, we know, but who is our audience in reality? I mean, you are, Karen, you are working with the people, telling them about details, about facts. Do you think that it changes something? Is this our audience, grassroots, or should we speak to the leaders?
Both. I'm afraid that even the leaders are not aware at a level that we would like them to be. But it's both, right? And we've just be aware you cannot do everything at the same time. So be picky about what you're doing and do that right. I think that should be enough. And right now, like I, as a 50-year-old, you know, I've done a lot of things in my life that I, you know, when looking back, you know, I've backpacked a lot. I've flew a lot towards these countries. Right now, I think I would like to offer the youngsters of now that would like to travel. I would like to offer them other opportunities. You know, take the boat, take the train, take the alternatives. Go together, make it a real travel in the sense that you not just take the ticket and go, but I think we need to change their direction. But we need to answer your question. We really need to be active on all levels. It's not. We can think it's only this or only that. And I do know that the average parents that are really very busy with their children and their jobs and the family and taking care of their parents. You know, you can reach them by offering activities for children. That's for me. That's really the way to go. And the elderly, they can be very active in all kinds of awareness activities. So I try to involve them as being the guides and being the teachers and being the people that telling the stories. I mean, we can involve people in their natural roles in a different way.
And how about culture, Annika? You are representing theater. This is, I mean,
I was thinking with technology for me and for my work. I mean, the last years to be able to Zoom and to just go out and reach out to the rest of the world and to connect and to network, that's been amazing, an amazing tool just to be able to do that and to share information. So this is the kind of where information can be spread, and it's so easy to jump into a meeting and you don't have to present yourself more than you're there. And then, so I mean, as a tool, technology as a tool, that's been great. And another tool that we need, because when we talk of theater, it's like we do have plays that are about the climate crisis or the sustainability on an artistic level, but what I've been lacking is that for me as a set designer, when it comes to material, when it comes to production line, when it comes to all the way that we produce, that's where the big gap is right now. And I would say that there is also a gap, because now with the on stage, yes, there are productions about the climate crisis or different ways or different thoughts about the future that are being made, but those two things has to be put together. And I think that would make a much bigger impact on the performing arts. But then so what do we have to do on the production side? We have to start to measure. That's really the one thing we have to do to be able to know what should we reduce? What is it? What does it mean to reduce? So we need a tool. And Julie's Bicycle, as you mentioned earlier, they had a tool. They have a tool for England, but then of course they use coal, they use gas, so we can't use that tool. But we have, I have to say that Denmark, and there's a small organization called Bæredygtig Scenkunst, driven by two persons, and they've been great. So in 2 years, they have brought out a tool for Denmark. And now my theater, Folketeatern in Gävle, we are a part of that. So we can use their tool, but it's in Danish. So of course, we need easier doors to be open. That tool should be in Swedish. But then if we can start to measure how we do productions, how we do events, what does it cost to heat up the house, what are those figures, then we know also where we should start to reduce. So as technology tools, I think those are great from my point of view. And I think when we start to do that, and then we all have to measure the same, because it's like with COVID, it depends on how you measure, you get different numbers. So all of us, so this information has to spread, and we have to start to use the same kind of measurements.
I think, you know, slightly coming from now my technical perspective, I would say that what we're also really lacking is an open source thinking with these tools. Mm-hmm. Because when I hear this, that, oh, we have this tool, but it's available in Danish, my thought is like, this sounds like a 1 week work. If the code was open source, it probably isn't, because most of these tools are not. So that is something that we also need to learn from, that we can't afford having to recreate these things again and again and again, just because somebody is very protective of their solution or their idea or their tool or their platform. We don't have time for this. We have to collaborate, and we have to keep everything open. We need to find other ways to monetize than to protect the thing that we have created just because we're afraid of losing it. So I think that's a very important point when it comes to technology, open source, all of it.
But how about the conditions? I mean, open source is a condition to enable people, actors, companies, organizations to implement different tools. But how about culture sector? What do we need except of tools of that kind? Do we need better cultural politics? Do we need financing? What do we need in culture sector? I mean, you are running a house of culture. What do you need to start working with climate in a more effective way?
To be honest, in some ways, we would need regulation to be lifted from us in some ways. I mean, when it comes to building with reused materials, which we do exclusively out in our container park, we would need some regulations to be lifted that allow us to use reused steel, for example. We cannot today, even though the steel could last for hundreds of years. We are not allowed to build with reused steel without jumping through the sort of loops that you can only really jump through if you are a large company or an educational institution, because it requires so much work on proving that this steel, you know, is usable. Of course it is. Look at it. You know, it's like you take a little bit of samples, it's this thick. We work with only with reused containers, etc. But the regulations are made for other things. The regulations are made to ensure very high levels of livability and safety. And these things are important, but we need to start treating climate as equally important, and reuse of resources as equally important. And perhaps we can be a bit more compromising in things like, well, perhaps not safety, but at least livability and those sorts of things, if it means that we are using resources again and recycling more. So some regulation to be lifted out of the way can really sometimes enable us in the smaller scales to do more work better.
What is the result of your work with sustainability? I mean, you do festivals, you create culture. What can you give some examples of what you do? Yes, absolutely. I mean, for example, one thing that we do is to build this container park right next to where we are. Just the fact that we're using reused containers, just the fact that we're using reused steel instead of people having to move into old office buildings because the people that rented the tenants moved into new office buildings, already that shifts something. I mean, we are completely flooded in the world with shipping containers.
And once a shipping container gets a few small holes, it can no longer be used as a shipping container. And what's done with it, it is either trashed or the steel is somehow like taken apart and then used for something else. But here we can use it for another 20 years as an artist studio, for example. So that's one clear thing we do. But I would also like to come back to the fact that I think that the changes of working on a grassroots level with community, local-based culture, thinking about where you are, it has much bigger systematic effects than one perhaps realizes. Because what does it mean that you've built an amazing environment around yourself, with a community around yourself where you feel at ease, satisfied, happy with life? It probably means that you consume less. It probably means you have a need to travel less. It probably means that you are no longer as interested in buying a house on the French, Riviera or something like that. You become more invested in your own space, more invested in your own community. These things are very hard to quantify. They're very difficult to quantify, especially for a small player like us. We can't really develop the KPIs that would be needed. Someone else would have to really research us and look at how is it actually affecting people's lives. But I bet you'd find that compared to the sort of baseline in society, people who come into our community, I can almost guarantee are going to have a smaller consumeristic footprint on the climate than had they not come in.
Yeah, interesting. Well, 2 points. Biomimicry teaches us that finding your solutions locally will bring you to creative solutions in terms of reusing material or using the abundant material just there, that's just on the spot. So like the containers, you're absolutely right, especially in harbors. There are many containers being there, so please use them. I would even argue, let's use old cruise ships for housing, because they're like hundreds a year going down the drain. You can look it up at cruise ships for sale website. So biomimicry teaches us, please, make these loops small. Make your own food, clothing, with all the materials that are there. And that's also, it's a boost for creativity as well.
Your best example, your best advice.
My best advice is reach out to your neighbors, invite them for a drink or a fika, I should say, or a coffee or a beer, would it be in the Netherlands, and start connecting with them again, because that's where lots of solutions come from. That's where a lot of questions are, and that's where and that's the other point I wanted to make, and that's where value is to be found. And that's not monetary value, but it's life quality value, and putting something together, as a in small, as a community. So my best suggestion is, reach out to your neighbors, make the WhatsApp group for the street, start to find together the questions and the answers in the street, in your building, in the area.
Are we the best advice with that? Yeah, I would like to give an example. I saw 2 days ago that Rufus Norris, who is artistic director of National Theatre in London, he came out in an article and said that the theatre is going to start to pay directors, set designers and other artists for their work with sustainability at the theatre. And I just think that's, so I want to raise the leaders to take their responsibility in this question, so that other artistic directors also pays the artist to do that work, because in that way we would get much more done faster. And let's see what kind of art comes out of that, because I think that would be really interesting. So more of that, that's my advice.
I don't know if we have been speaking about your advice, but you're welcome.
I think I gave some advice already there, but I would really echo what's been said here, that if you don't have a big idea to save the world or to make everyone aware of something, that is fine. You're probably even going to make more of an impact just acting very locally with the people around you, if that's what you're connected to. So I would say never think that some action around you is too small to do. Like that is the sort of thing that can make us very complacent and very fatalistic. And you don't have to solve so everyone doesn't use plastic straws. A better thing might actually be to just organize your community around making it more beautiful, more livable, more thrivable for you and the ecosystems around you. That might even have a bigger effect.
Yeah, I think that it was Dalai Lama who said that if you don't think that you can change the world, try to sleep with a mosquito in a room. But what I would like to say at the end is that our work on the level of people is really important, and as important as the work of our leaders. United Nations has this initiative which is called the Agenda 21 Culture. If somebody is interested in studying some more materials which are connected to our sector, there are not many, but there is one report which was written 21, quite recent. Which gives examples about what they call climate resilient development pathways. So there is a summary, and there are always quite many examples from different parts of the world on tangible methods, tools to work with culture or with other sectors, with other technology. Interesting one to study and to learn something about what we can do in our surrounding. This conversation comes to an end now. I would like to thank all the people here. You can watch us on the Facebook, on different channels, on different pages, I should say. But also this conversation will be transformed into the podcast, where you will not hear my voice, you will only hear our people who are conversating here, and that podcast will be published on the Nordic Talks homepage. So thank you for today, and welcome to the next conversation, the third one, which will be broadcasted in September. Thank you. Bye.